Hi, I'm Tim Harrison. I'm the Managing Director of Ionic Rare Earths Limited. We're an Australian-listed company progressing magnet and heavy rare earths through recycling. Hi, Matt.
Hey Tim, hey, how are you? Thought it'd be kind of good to kind of catch up end of year because you've been pretty busy on the ground since we saw you in Belfast when we weren't on the plant. Well, I guess first of all, we were talking about government grants and access to them, etc. I think you put out a piece recently talking about it. So, what do we need to know on that front?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been a process. So, if you recall back in July when you came through Belfast, we were talking about the process with grants. We were talking about the engagement that we've been having with the UK government across a number of different ministries and I suppose vehicles. We've completed the feasibility study now. We're able to progress the application. We've been having routine discussion with the APC about the grant, routine discussion with DBT, so Department of Business and Trade, and how we best position the project and the opportunity. So we finalised all the documentation, submitted that last week, and we'll be looking forward to what we expect will be a positive outcome in the first quarter of 2025.
Right. So at this moment in time, you don't know what one, whether you'll get anything, two, what the quantum will be, or three, if there's any interest, or have I got that wrong?
No, look, we've got a pretty good handle on where the indicative range for this will sit. We've had discussions about what that would look like. It's probably a little bit early for us to put any real sort of numbers around it, other than to say it would be a substantial commitment towards the commercial plant in Belfast. For all intent and purpose, it is a significant cornerstone commitment, or will be a significant cornerstone commitment.
Okay, so let's talk about what do they get out of it, as in, why are they likely to, give you a grant? Why is it likely to be significant? So what does magnet rare earth recycling plants do for the UK?
Look, what we do with the technology and the offering that we're bringing to the UK is we're actually going to be providing the UK with sovereign capability for magnet rare earths. That in itself will provide the inputs for the UK to develop, a magnet rare earth, neodymium ion boron magnet supply chain, which will go into helping to secure about 1 million jobs in the UK's auto sector. So, that automotive transformation fund that the UK government's got, 850 million sterling, which has been targeted around, helping existing players and new players in the auto sector in the UK moving towards electric vehicle, security on supply chain. And so what we're doing with Ionic Technologies is a key component of providing the UK with domestic capability for magnet rare earths, which can then be converted into metals, alloys and magnets, and ultimately going into the e-drives that, companies like our collaboration partner Ford are looking to do in the UK.
Okay, and let's just take a look at that kind of joined up thinking, because I've got to ask the question, because investors will be asking the question is, surely this is a matter for private companies, not governments, to get involved with. So again, what role is the UK government, having in this kind of slightly more joined up thinking about, what's coming down the line?
So I think government also has a role to play in providing security on supply chains, especially on these geopolitically sensitive strategic raw materials. We've seen money deployed across a number of those commodities. We've seen money deployed by the UK government across lithium, and they've got various different vehicles that they've done that through. So, magnet rare earths are no different. Magnet rare earths are required for the electric motors, which ultimately provide the traction for electric vehicles. So they're incredibly important to, a substantial amount of existing capacity, existing productivity in the UK.
Right. And look, I'm going to grill you on this because, look, what I see is something potentially quite exciting in the sense that this is a cookie cutter approach to doing it in the US and Brazil, and we'll talk about that in a second. But so you've been through a process with the UK government and other industry partners, technically. So, again, just maybe remind people how new to this story, what the process that you've been through to prove that this thing works, and now we're just at the money end for the build out phase of the equation.
Yeah, so again, we've had about £5 million worth of grants and commitments from the UK government to date. Our first grant was actually from the APC back in 2022. That was a grant to build a demonstration plant. We delivered that. We've delivered product at spec. We've got additional grant funding from the UK government to do the feasibility study. We've delivered that. And so we've now positioned ourselves with, two major inputs. Technology works, product is at spec, feasibility study is robust. So we've got all the inputs now to be able to engage with government to talk about that next round of funding, the capital grant allocation, and ultimately building jobs, building capability, sovereign capability in the UK, and providing critical raw materials into UK advanced manufacturing. So, I think we're positioning ourselves well. We've demonstrated the technology works. We've demonstrated the product. We've been able to move forward with commercial partnerships, collaborations across the supply chain, metal making, alloys, magnets, and automotive. And we expect that there will be more partnerships that will come to light in due course.
Okay, and let's stick with this for a bit. So you sort of explain what the government gets out of it and why it's involved and why grants are there. And obviously for you as a business, the cost of capital at this stage is critical in terms of the economics. So if we look at the constituent parts that you're going to need to piece together, which is obviously debt, equity, to get this thing built out. Where is that going to come from? How do you kind of manage that cost of capital? And again, what role does the UK government have in all of that?
Yeah, look, so again, the UK has got various vehicles that's established. One of those is what's now called the National Wealth Fund, right? So previously it was called UK Infrastructure Bank. That has a mandate on energy transition and regional growth. Now, what are we doing in Belfast? We're part of that energy transition. We're producing the materials that will go into the magnets that will enable, renewable energy created through offshore wind and onshore wind for that matter. We're located in Northern Ireland. So we're smack bang right in the middle of the mandate. So we see that as being a very good opportunity for the company to work through. We're also in discussion with strategic investors who've shown an appetite for what we're doing. They want exposure to rare earths. Being in the UK with a capital of 85 million is very, very doable. And so, we're able to go from end-of-life material straight back into oxides, build a supply chain, be part of that new ecosystem that can be developed.
Okay, so that's their component. Obviously, equity markets for public companies really kind of stressed and strained at the moment. What other options available to you in terms of industry partner or even private sector money coming into something like this? Because this is effectively a licensing model which you can replicate around the world. So I want to understand what all the moving parts are here.
Yeah. So beyond the debt strategic investors, we've also got dialogue happening with offtake, pre-commitments on offtake, because again, what we make is not only magnet rare earths, but we make two heavy rare earths which are dominant. China completely controls the supply of dysprosium and terbium. And so with our technology, we're able to separate out those as individual products at high purity. And we have had significant interest from existing rare earth supply chain participants who are very conscious of the tight potential supply on DY and TB over the end of this decade and beyond, and are now looking for new supply of DYTB, plus also, European capability to meet with the requirements of the European Critical Raw Material Act. So we do see quite a strong appetite for the products that we'll produce. Being recycled material, it can go straight into that 25% target for the EU. And I think that that's probably going to be part of policy that we'll see replicated in a number of other Western countries as well.
Okay, and let's look at maybe, again, government or private sector's ability to give you the feed that you need. Obviously, recycling is big part of the UK new government's mandate, and I think one of the top three focuses with their soon to come round of rationing of budgets here. Can they help you with the kind of those sorts of feed conversations? Do they incentivize others to use you, or are you kind of on your own private sector type conversations around the feed? How does that work?
So there's a number of different opportunities that we see through the support of government, right? Through various government departments, access to material, access to policy, and that policy can create a set of conditions that mean that material that's in the UK must be funneled back and processed through the UK because it has a strategic importance. It has a critical importance going back into advanced manufacturing in the UK, rather than being shipped out to other countries through Asia and ultimately back into China, which is what has been happening to some degree for the last 20 plus years. So policy is a big one. I would say that there is also activity underway through some government departments, whether it's a form of matchmaking or it's positioning to try and help supply chains come together. We've got collaboration that we're working on now, demonstrated collaboration with both LCM and Ford. Now, we do see government also working with those parties, but also potentially other parties to help bring that ecosystem together so that that material is flowing back into ultimately being converted into products whereby the UK can have that domestic capability. So it is upon us, but government is also assisting with some of those discussions.
Right. And how are you viewing this Belfast operation? Because I think you got the land that you're going to build on, have you?
Yeah, look, we're working through the permitting now.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm trying to work out is how do you treat that? Do you just treat that as effectively a commercial demonstration plant so that you can sell and license this to other parties, private sector or otherwise, elsewhere in the world? And we shouldn't be looking at this as a commercial operation in its own right, or how do you see the economics working going forward for you? Because I need to work out, how does this thing make money? And if you're making money, you're not diluting me, and I'm making money.
So Belfast, for all intent and purpose, will be a commercial facility. It will make money, and it's a model that we will see replicated in other markets. Now, we've done some work around operating costs, and whilst we do see Belfast being commercially viable at current spot prices today, we think that there's potentially even more upside as we look to other target markets. Now, mentioned previously the US, Brazil, areas where we think we can reduce the operating costs. There's other areas that we're looking at as well. So we're very much looking at what we do in Belfast being potentially the first plant, where we can develop the technology, commercialize the technology, but continue to improve and enhance the technology, and ultimately roll that out to other sites. So it's not looking at Belfast in isolation. there's a multiplier effect here.
But I guess what I'm getting at is you're also, okay, it's commercial, but you're also using it to refine the process in the flow sheet. You're using it as something that people can come and look to and say, look, here's the mechanics of how the thing works. So that's why I sort of described it as a sort of commercial demonstration plant in a way. It's still the kind of R&D center.
Look, well, it will be an R&D center because it'll be an area where we'll continue to invest in being at the bleeding edge of what we're doing with regard to rare earth separation and recycling. It also provides us with a site where we'll be able to work with partners, we'll be able to train operators, we'll be able to build the human capital, which is all part of the offering, because this is a skill set that we are developing in the UK, right? And it's a skill set that we then want to roll out as operators and partners in joint ventures in those target markets. So it does provide us with a site where we can continue to enhance and improve what we're doing and then roll that out to our partners.
Okay, so the rollout is a kind of quite aggressive, ambitious part of the strategy, right? Because I think that the thing with technologies like this, the feedstock coming in and therefore which kind of determines the size of the facility, determines the economics, which determines the return on capital invested, and upside for me as an investor. So that's what I look to. But if you're then moving forward with this kind of licensing issue, I therefore expect that's that you take a percentage and someone else secures the land, someone else pays for the build, and then someone else pays you for the use of the technology. Does that mean that kind of ongoing, I'm not going to see large sort of capital raises from you?
What we're looking at is leveraging the IP, the know-how, and being ahead of everybody else into those partnerships. And so our partners will provide local know-how, local infrastructure, local capital, which mean that we can then quickly get up the curve with those joint venture facilities. We don't have to go in there and start with a greenfield facility and start from scratch. We want to leverage off partners who can bring something to the partnership. Now, that could be an operator of a particular site that has all the reagents that we need, making those reagents at cost, which could substantially reduce the operating cost even further. So it's about trying to find the right partner. And we now are armed with that information on the back of the feasibility study to be able to understand who those partners are, what the jurisdictions are, what are the main drivers here. Power is obviously a big one, because power translates not only to the power requirements for the operation of the facility, but the power requirements in making the reagents. So it really does help us sort of zero in on where we think the best opportunities are for us to scale this out.
Right. Okay. So what we're saying is there's a multitude of different potential commercial partnerships.
Yep.
Different formats depending on what they're bringing to the table. Okay. Understood. Can we talk about peers? Not peers. Well, you can call them peers if you want. Competition. This is recycling is a space which has always been sort of fairly amateurish. We're now moving into an era in this kind of green transition we're going through, where you've got lots of new entrants into the marketplace. So competition is going to be there. What does that look like for you? And how do you kind of mitigate your sort of exposure to competition coming in after you and stealing your lunch?
Yeah, look, I think there's a number of companies in the recycling space at the moment. Now, different offering, different technologies. Some are what's called short loop recycling. So rather than going all the way back to separated oxides, they're going back to a metal powder. Then you've got others that are more of a medium loop that are going to a mixed rare earth oxide product. And then you've got companies like ourselves, which are long loop, going all the way back to high purity separated oxides. Now, as it stands right now, if we look at who's doing that in the Western world right now, there's ourselves going long loop. There's maybe one or two others But we see there's going to be room for a lot of players in this space. And I think the differentiator for us is that we have the potential to take those intermediate products that other recyclers produce and bring that into our process to be able to separate that as well. So we do have a lot of optionality on the type of products that we can introduce to our process, and ultimately the value that can be created through the IP.
Okay, so if I take let's get into Veritas with the Brazilian guys partnership potential there. Talk me through how that works and what the kind of, I guess, the financial outcome or the hope for financial outcome is. Because if I can get a sense of how you go about replicating this, how quickly it can be done, and then kind of look at your balance sheet entirely differently. So maybe talk through the Brazilian JV.
Yeah, so our Brazilian JV with Veritas Mining and Minerals, aptly named Viridian, is targeting moving pretty quickly now on recycling. So the joint venture plans to build recycling capability in Brazil, but also ultimately a rare earth refinery that can process the mixed rare earth carbonate from the Colossus project. Now, Colossus is a large ionic adsorption clay, high grade, very large deposit, really, really good metallurgy, and is quite an exciting opportunity for Ionic. Building a refinery that has the potential to bring that product to market means that we will be part of a new ecosystem that's going to develop in Brazil. Brazil's got substantial mineral endowment. It's got a government that's very, very keen on more value addition. It doesn't want to just see this material dug up and shipped off. It wants to see, ultimately magnet capability developed in Brazil. Now, if we think about that magnet capability, what's really important to understand in Brazil is that well before COVID, Brazil had procured equipment. A facility in Brazil called LabFab had procured equipment. Now, that equipment has been idle for a little while. Minister A government has effectively purchased that facility and is now progressing the capability to make permanent magnets in Brazil. They can make their target is to make about 100 tons of neodymium iron boron magnets. Now, for them to make magnets in Brazil, they need access to oxides. We can deliver that access to oxides through recycling in Brazil right now. And so the dialogue that we've been having with stakeholders in Brazil, we've had a number of visitors to Belfast from Brazil over the course of the last 8 months. We're really positioning ourselves to move very, very quickly now on recycling, because if we can couple recycling with the capability that's being developed at LabFab, we can very quickly build an ecosystem in Brazil that can make Brazilian magnets. That's incredibly important to advanced manufacturing there. And the other point I would point out is that earlier this year, the Brazilian government implemented a policy around circular economy, whereby they are mandating advanced manufacturing and OEMs build that capability into their plans. And so the OEMs are very active in that space. We do see Brazil having, huge opportunity with regard to what's happening on the energy transition. Brazil's already a massive wind power participant with aspirations to move very, very heavily into offshore wind as well. It's the 10th biggest economy in the world. And there is a number of companies now moving to Brazil to develop electric vehicles, wind turbines, and all sorts of other applications that use permanent magnets. So we do think it's a pretty exciting opportunity, and we want to be in at the ground floor. We want to build that capability. We want to be integrating with partners in Brazil, and through Viridian, it's the perfect vehicle for Ionic to be a participant early on.
Right, and it sounds like, because it comes back to my earlier line of questioning around, government involvement and government helping, secure the critical minerals or critical mineral security, and more importantly, get involved with the whole chain, the whole ecosystem around that, and support it where it can. So it's like even companies like Brazil, which most of your investors may not know much about doing business in, they're following a similar line of thought and engagement as the UK government.
Yeah, very much so. We see, we had one of our team members meeting with a number of stakeholders that we've been engaging with last week in Brazil. So, investment arm of Ministry government. We've been meeting there with other stakeholders, UK export finance, all around, how we best position the technology, position ourselves, be, part of that new supply chain forming. We have seen really strong engagement so far, which has been extremely pleasing.
Right. Okay. So, obviously done a lot this year. I don't think they're saying you're getting the credit for it. So people are sort of sitting back and waiting to sort of say, well, we understand the process you've been through. We understand the things that you've got to get in place, but it's like the last few yards here in the game. What are the moments, or what are the deliverables for you that in 2025 that you think will give you the kind of credibility and you will get the recognition for?
Look, I think we've really positioned now Belfast to move forward with commercialisation. So I think the big one here is going to be the capital grant. I think that's going to be a big one for us. We continue to engage with strategic partners or strategic investors with regards to what's happening in Belfast, the potential opportunity to be part of what we intend to build there. So I think that they're big ones. I think also our ability to take the technology to other markets. So we've got our joint venture in Brazil. We are very active in a few other opportunities which we're pushing quite hard on. Obviously the US is a really interesting market for us, and we've been looking at that for some time. So hopefully we're not far off on that as well.
I mean, I do want to let you go. I know you've got places to be, but you said at the beginning, well, it sounded like you were suggesting that Brazil or Belfast could be next. It's that close in terms of they're running along parallel at the moment in terms of timing.
I think...
Am I reading too much into what you're saying?
As far as, it all comes back to scale, right? So, we've done the feasibility study for Belfast. We know the economics, we know the indicative scale, what we think can be built, what can be filled, what does the UK need. We've got a modular design. We can effectively add modules on. I think, which means that we can scale back capability in Brazil, which can be right-sized for the opportunity to work closely with a company like LabFab. We have a lot of optionality, and that I think really provides us with the flexibility to work with partners on the capability they need, the scale they need, how much material they're processing. But it also means that as they ramp up capability, we can also add more capability. And I think that that's probably another point that, with regards to the feasibility study, when we look at, a resource or reserve, typically that's something that diminishes over time. It depletes. Year on year, you're effectively mining that material, and you've got less ultimately to go through.
Spending money on exploration and drilling, which is expensive, but it's not.
That's right.
It's a very different profile.
What we're doing on recycling is effectively, we've got a feasibility study that assumes a 20-year life. Now, the reality is that this thing's going to run much longer than 20 years. It's also going to have more capacity going through it, because ultimately, as the rare earth supply chain builds, there will be more magnets. As that magnet capacity increases, the amount of waste material produced in the production of those magnets also increases. So that swarf component increases. And so you have this compounding effect. So the reality is that, it's almost the inverse of what you would normally see with regards to a depleted reserve. We're actually going to see more material coming to market, more material going through recycling, which means that we can tack on capability. Now, whether or not we tack that capability on, existing sites or we build brand new sites, that is the opportunity. There is no constraint here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting times. And just be really clear. So basically, the fees that you've done on Belfast, that's just going to be used for Brazil.
It's a template. Yeah, it's a template, okay. Right? You pick the template up and you go, right, bang. Okay, what are my inputs? What are my localized inputs? What do I need for this location? What are my reagent costs? And then you run the sensitivity. Okay, well, it's that location or that location. And you can quickly work out, well, okay, if we're going to build it here, then the trade-off will need X, Y, and Z to be competitive with another location.
Okay, interesting. Well, look, Tim, I'll sit back and wait for this grant announcement because I think once we sort of understand the quantum of that, it just changes things dramatically for you if it's a decent chunk. Appreciate your time. Stay in touch, okay?
Thanks, Matt. Will do.